Hi guys, well today we're going to be taking a look at the Lian Li PC-O5S. Now the O Series is a new concept for Lian Li. It sees the computer chassis take on the form of an open-air design. So there are a number of different models within the series. This particular one that we're looking at today is exclusively tailored for the Mini-ITX form factor. So if you're building a smaller rig, perhaps want something which is unique, then this could be a good option for you. O5S uses a combination of aluminium and tempered glass for its design and makes use of a number of specialised features. Now this case is by no means cheap. Make sure you're sitting down for this one. In the UK, £280. Over in the US, it's around $300. So as we go into the video, hopefully we're going to see if this case is really worth the money. So let's begin. As we always do, we'll begin at the front of the case. So O5S uses a combination of aluminium and perforated mesh. So that mesh there will provide some ventilation for the internal components. And Lian Li include allocation for installing a slim optical drive, and we have the front panel connectivity just below this. And that consists of two USB 3 ports, headphone and microphone jacks, and a power button. Now it's worth noting at this stage that the case can be positioned in a number of ways. So we can have the case stood up vertically using the supplied stand just like this. Another option would be to purchase a set of 4 padded feet so that the case can be placed horizontally. Or the case can be attached to the wall as we have the mounting coils on the reverse side. Up at the top of O5S, Lian Li has given the panel plenty of ventilation because there are two 120mm cooling fans pre-installed. And we're going to have a look at those when we go inside the case. Around the back we have the obvious space for the rear I/O ports, and then further down there are 2 openings so that you can feed the power cables to the back of O5S. And then just next to this we have 4 PCI covers for multi-GPU support. Now the side panels on O5S are quite special. The prominent side here features this large sheet of tempered glass for a complete overview of the internal components, while on the reverse there is this aluminium panel with allocation for installing a 120 or 140mm cooling fan. And fixing those panels onto the chassis, there are these oversized thumb screws. You just need to take a little bit of care when you do loosen those screws, as once they are all slack, the panel can drop down if you've got it in this orientation being vertical, and if you haven't already attached that stand. And actually trying to get the glass panel back onto the chassis is quite problematic because you kind of have to slide the sheet in between the chassis and the stand, and you have to hold it up at the same time, and it's quite weighty, and you've got to obviously align the holes and then apply the screws. And if you do drop the panel, the holes don't line up, so it has to almost be a two-man job. So hopefully Lian Li can modify this design in future to make it a little bit easier to get that panel back onto the case and vice versa. So detaching the tempered glass panel, we now have an overview of the internals of O5S and the layout. Now this particular model is capable of housing the Mini-ITX form factor, and you can see that the components are assembled in a slightly different arrangement to what we used to because this case follows an open-air design. And here is a quick look at the reverse. And so we're now going to move in for a closer look at the features inside. Okay, so we'll begin at the bottom of the case where we've got the graphics card placement. So there are a total of 4 PCI covers. Each of the covers is ventilated and it uses a long thumb screw so that you can easily remove it. And the beauty with O5S is that you can have the graphics card facing the window as you see it right now, because we've got a riser card and an extension cable. Additional to this, we can also alter where the card sits by adjusting the bracket. And we can even add in another graphics card by purchasing a second riser card extender cable. Now another reason to shift the card forward is so that we can make use of the hard drive allocation sitting just behind, where we can install 2 2.5-inch drives, or 1 2.5-inch drive and 1 3.5-inch drive. Moving up through the case, at the top there we have 2 120mm cooling fans which are attached to this aluminium frame, which we can actually remove with the fans attached, as you can see. Now although these fans are aligned to be exhaust, we still have a detachable dust filter, and this shifts out from the compartment. And a little later we're going to look at the radiator support in this particular area. Now the power supply sits at the front of the case here and is attached to an aluminium bracket. You'll notice that we've installed an SFX unit inside the case, because although we do have up to 140mm for the maximum length, the ATX form factor will simply not fit or align to that mounting bracket. Now, the hard drive storage comes in many forms. There is a variety of different areas to install both your 2.5-inch and your 3.5-inch drives. So below the power supply, next to the graphics card, we have this cage, which, as you can see, can be detached from the chassis. You just need to remove 2 screws from the other side. This cage can take a trio of 3.5-inch drives and can also accommodate a single 2.5-inch drive at the very bottom by attaching some screws to the underside. The 3.5-inch drives are installed by fixing screws to the mounting holes on the sides. And so by Lian Li giving us this option to remove this cage, we can obviously take this out permanently and fit bigger graphics cards into the case. Another great inclusion is this hard drive cover, so you can place this plate and fix it over the cage to retain that sleekness in the case. Behind the motherboard tray there is also some additional hard drive storage. So we've got this long plate here which is attached to the tray, and as you can see we've already installed a 2.5-inch drive to it, and this plate can house up to two 2.5-inch drives, or conversely a single 3.5-inch drive and a single 2.5-inch drive. All you've got to do to install those is unfix the plate and then apply screws to the underside of each drive. And you can also use the optical drive cage to install a single 2.5-inch drive or a 3.5-inch drive if you aren't planning to use a DVD drive. So you can clearly see that O5S is certainly very flexible for the storage. Okay, next up we're going to be checking out the clearance options inside O5S, as this will really establish for us any hardware boundaries that this case can present. So first of all, looking at the CPU cooler, we've got approximately there from the tray to the side panel around 85mm for the maximum height. When we look at the graphics card clearance, you can fit cards with a maximum length of up to 190mm if you've got that hard drive cage attached, and then without the cage you have up to 300mm. And for reference there, we're using the XFX 260X. Now the cables are going to be stored behind the motherboard tray, and between the tray and the side panel there is approximately 3.5cm of space, so that is really more than adequate for tackling your cable management. Now, even though this case is designed for the Mini-ITX form factor, we still have some support for a 240mm radiator at the very top. So here we've got the Corsair Hydro H100i, which is a 240mm closed loop solution. And we've taken out the cooling fans, we've installed it at the top there in that bracket, and it actually fits there really well. You can see there is plenty of space around the fans. From the top of the motherboard to the fans, there is approximately 3cm. Right guys, well, for our final clip it'd be a good idea to see how loud those case fans are inside the case. So we've reattached the cooling fans at the very top there, and I'm going to power the system up, get my microphone as close to those fans as possible, just to give you a bit of a demonstration. And by the way, we've disabled the graphics card just to eliminate some of the noise. So that is the new Lian Li O5S, and I'm sure you'll agree that this is rather a unique case. In our experience, we've definitely found it to be a very fun case to build inside, and is pretty flexible. You know, it's great that it can house that 240mm closed loop at the very top, and also great that it can have those big graphics cards inside and have them positioned towards that windowed area of the case. It's definitely not a case for everyone though, you know, with that hefty price tag. But those who gravitate towards aluminium, I'm sure, are really going to like O5S. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video today, guys. Thanks very much for taking the time out to watch, and I'll see you guys in the next one.